The upscale Raleigh restaurant had an air of joy and celebration. Under the gentle glow of the golden lights that illuminate the linen-covered tables, the crystal wine glasses glisten. Laughter and the sound of glasses being clinked filled the room until they stopped. My husband, Michael Harper, stood up in the middle of the crowd, lifted his wine glass, and a smile of confidence came across his face. We were all here to celebrate our son, Nathan's master's degree in business administration, an occasion for joy, a significant turning point. Sadly, Michael's comments that followed shattered that joy like a hammer shatters glass. When he said, "I've decided to start a new chapter in my life," apart from Eleanor, everyone in the room fell quiet. 40 pairs of eyes were riveted on me as Eleanor Harper, at 52 years old, spent 25 years creating this family. Nathan did not budge from where he sat down beside me. The emerald graduation ribbon he had worked so hard for hung loosely around his neck, now quite irritable. Lauren Mitchell, who was behind the scenes, was clearly visible as Michael's interior designer and mistress. Being around her was a clear sign of treachery. My so-called friends who knew about the affair shifted uncomfortably in their seats. We were laughing over nothing more than light talk over coffee only last week. Con artists. Nobody was brave enough to bet that I may break, to mourn, to explode into a dramatic tantrum. Rather than that, I beamed, an expression of calm determination. I praised Michael on his decision with a steady voice that sliced through the silence like a blade. I took a pristine white envelope out of my purse and delicately placed it next to his plate. His haughty countenance started to twist. "So what exactly is this?" His voice betrayed a tinge of anxiety as he asked. I continued, "Something for you to read later," being calm and collected the whole while. When I glanced at Nathan, he had a pale complexion and was wearing a hat to celebrate his graduation. As I approached, I kissed his face. "I am really proud of you, my darling. This day is still yours." I stood up, fixed my clothes, and addressed the stunned spectators. "I hope you savor your dinner." Feeling the weight of their attention on my back, I stepped out my heels, tapping on the polished hardwood floor, wishing you all a wonderful evening. Angry mutterings trailed behind me as the heavy glass door slammed shut. I stood outside on a hot July night in Raleigh, where the air was thick and muggy and stuck to my skin. However, I was able to breathe normally again after a long absence. Just as I was about to make my way back, the door swung open. After me, Michael's agitated, high-pitched voice yelled out, "Eleanor, what the fuck is going on?" I've spent months planning how to take advantage of his betrayal, and it all began with that package. Math has always been my strong suit, and my 25 years of experience in the field have sharpened my ability to find patterns and hidden truths in massive amounts of data. Michael had left a data trail that was easy enough for a beginner to follow. "Tell me what you've done." A small smile tugged at my lips as I walked on. "You know, math has always been my strong suit. Through my 25 years of experience in the field, I have honed my ability to detect patterns and unearth hidden truths within large amounts of data." Michael, he had left a data trail that was easy enough for a beginner to follow. I ensured our family's financial stability. While he pursued his lofty ambitions, 2 doomed software firms, a midlife crisis that drove him to find himself. Through Asheville yoga retreats, I was the breadwinner. When he invested our life savings in a friend's cryptocurrency scheme, a business that failed in a year or less, I was in charge of the finances. Although Michael followed his passion for artisanal coffee roasters, I toiled away at my firm's spreadsheets late into the night to pay Nathan's tuition. His enthusiasm lasted precisely 4 months until he became disinterested. Starting a risk analysis business for women, which was my personal goal, was constantly put on the back burner. Upon Nathan's graduation, I would assure myself, soon after Michael achieves a sense of security. Finding steadiness with Michael, though, was like attempting to follow a desert mirage. Always evading capture, it glistened. Something seemed wrong with our joint accounts around 3 months ago. Typical expenditure is not supported by these little transactions. Miami aircraft ticket, $800. A 2-night stay at a 5-star South Beach hotel can set you back $200. I paid $3,500 for a diamond bracelet, but I have yet to get it. I initially assumed it was a technical issue, possibly due to a mistake made by the bank. However, warning signs are not something I disregard. After all, I've made a living seeing potential dangers. So like a puzzle solver, I began to dig stealthily and slowly. In the middle of the night, with the only sound being the air conditioner's hum, I went online to access our bank login. Using our credit card bills as a reference, I tracked down the purchases. My worst fears were realized by what I discovered. It had been more than a year since Michael had begun funneling funds into an offshore account. He had treated Lauren to expensive Durham restaurants, purchased her a diamond jewelry, and even placed $50,000 down on a non-refundable property near Wilmington's seaside, while insisting that we cut back in order to save enough for retirement. He had declared in a strained voice, "We can't afford that new dishwasher right now, Eleanor," only 2 weeks prior. As he sent money to his mistress, I had nodded, believing him. Up next, I uncovered the messages. As if nothing were wrong with him, Michael once forgot to lock his iPad and left it on the kitchen counter. I was only cleaning the counter to prepare breakfast when the notice drew my attention, not because I was spying. Lauren sent me a text. "So excited for our new life together, darling," she said, and my stomach sank. My shaking fingertips tapped the screen as I skimmed over their chat. Messages on their objectives. Speaking of his impending finally be free, he chose to break the news of our breakup at Nathan's graduation celebration, assuming I would keep my cool under pressure. "She'll be too ashamed to respond," he had recorded. "Okay," Lauren said in response. As I stood there in the early light coming through the window, surrounded by the aroma of coffee, I felt as if the floor had disappeared from under me. Then we can begin anew. For 25 years, Nathan and I dreamed big spoke late into the night and held each other through his childhood fevers. But my marriage was a lie. Still, I refrained from sobbing. At that time, no. I sent screenshots and copies of the messages to myself via email. After that, I restored the iPad to its original state on the counter and cleared its cache. A little while later, Michael walked downstairs, unaware, whistling. He said, "Good morning, honey," as he planted a kiss on my cheek. I put on an act of friendliness, "Good morning." Michael had no clue, he never understood, that I am a master of information tracing. I meticulously documented all of the financial transactions, including wire transfers and credit card charges. Documenting Michael's betrayal hurt like a knife to my soul. Nevertheless, I persisted beyond that. I hired Mark, a charming private investigator who specialized in adultery cases. He confirmed what I had suspected. These photographs show Michael and Lauren walking hand in hand down the Wilmington boardwalk. The receipts from a weekend retreat in Charleston reveal amusement park expenses. The Raleigh apartment lease signed by both of them. In a low-key downtown coffee shop, Mark discreetly handed me the file. "Mrs. My apologies, Harper. I knew this wouldn't be an easy assignment, so I firmly placed the file in my rucksack and bowed in appreciation. I wasn't about to collapse or anything while I was beginning to build my case." Michael was understandably worried that I would claim half of his future earnings under our prenuptial agreement we signed 25 years ago. He had recently inherited a small sum from his father and was quite anxious about this prospect. I hadn't given it much thought since I loved and trusted him so much. The paper would speed up his demise. In the fine print was a loyalty condition that, if violated, would result in heavy financial fines. Late at night, when the sun goes down and just the blue light from my laptop lights up our bedroom, I read it from beginning to end. Michael slept peacefully next to me, sleeping softly, unaware that I was hatching a scheme to kill him. It was impossible to understand the clause. James Carter, my lawyer, was the man I needed the next morning. "It's ironclad," James said as he sipped his coffee at a cafe outside his office. "Seems like you have proof of the affair which might bring him down. His share in the business, the house and retirement savings." I said, good as an unexpected calmness enveloped me as I sipped my coffee and nodded. "Shall we proceed?" Michael was busy planning his grand exit as I discreetly got ready for what was to follow. My careful record-keeping included every clandestine transaction and potentially damaging correspondence. The second encounter between James and I occurred just before we needed to submit the divorce paperwork. I had a feeling Michael would wait to break the news until after Nathan's graduation, so as not to ruin the joyous occasion for Nathan. I had already submitted the paperwork that morning, prior to his planned speech at the restaurant, but he was completely unaware. They are safely kept in the court records and will be served when the time comes, even if he does not have access to them at the moment. I managed to stay ahead of the game at all times. I had been anticipating this moment for far longer than Michael could have thought, but he thought his comment had taken me by surprise. We purchased this beautiful Victorian in Raleigh's historic Oakwood area 15 years ago, when we were a team or so, I thought, and I drove there. The house had already been offered to Lauren in those messages on Michael's iPad, and he had no clue I had viewed them. As I made my way out the familiar creak of the front gate, welcomed me to the driveway where I promptly parked my car. It appeared the same from the inside. We worked together to restore the hardwood floors after a pipe broke in 2009. Framing the hallway are photos from Nathan's formative years, such as his first bike ride, his triumph at the middle school science competition, and his high school graduation. Michael and I would often retire to this leather couch in the living room late at night, daydreaming about our future as a couple. When Nathan left for college, we planned to spend our golden years exploring the globe. Things had changed, though. It appeared as though the house had been deserted, leaving behind nothing but a ruin. I went upstairs to our bedroom where the faint scent of Michael's perfume lingered. As I unlocked the closet, my fingertips ran over the row of dresses that I had worn to many business events supporting Michael's company pitches. Behind them in the corner were his baggage. All the parts have been put together. After his big news, I will be prepared to depart tomorrow. As I stared at them, my jaw dropped wide in a sour laugh. He was meticulous about his appearance, carefully ironing his shirts to perfection and making sure his pocket squares and ties were a perfect match. When it came to matters of paramount importance, though he acted irresponsibly, ignorant as sin, seeing nothing, friends from the restaurant, Nathan, and even Michael's sister Sarah, who had flown in from Atlanta to attend the graduation, were all sending messages that kept ringing on the phone in my purse. I withdrew it as my heart raced in reaction to Nathan's message. "Are you not here?" I said. "Are you okay, Mom?" In spite of the wrath boiling within of me, I managed to answer with steady fingers. "I'm surviving. Be kind with yourself. Get well soon. You hold a special place in my heart." So as not to ruin Nathan's final semester, I had kept him in the dark for months. Michael was helping Lauren out financially, as he strove mightily to pay for his textbooks with extracurricular activities and a part-time job. I hoped Nathan would find it out eventually, but I was worried he would be angry that I hadn't told him. Not only did he get my gift for sifting through noise, but he also inherited my charm and analytical mind, which together helped him win program honors. I would not let Michael's betrayal diminish that achievement. At this time, I am not prepared. The quilt my mom had made for our wedding day felt soft on my skin as I sat at the foot of our bed. Whenever Michael surprised me with breakfast in bed on Sundays, I would reminisce about our early married years when we would dance to vintage jazz records in the kitchen, laughing at our own foolishness as we stepped on each other's toes. We had been through a lot as a team. We were utterly devastated by two disastrous endeavors. Michael would calm Nathan down throughout his difficult toddler years by taking him on walks around the house while singing softly to put him to sleep, especially during his bouts of colic, when he would scream for hours. Before Nathan was born, we had been each other's solace throughout the anguish of a miscarriage, and the loss had broken us both. In what ways had Michael changed? Had I been so enamored with him that I failed to recognize this narcissistic, deceitful man for who he really was? I shook my head to clear my mind of the memories. At this moment, they held no significance. Everything hinged on the plan I had cooked up. The envelope Michael had set on his plate contained more than just a scrap of paper. I had left more than that. The key to my emancipation and his downfall were both contained therein. I stood up straight, straightened my back, and walked downstairs ready for whatever that came my way. I stood up straight, straightened my back, and walked downstairs ready for whatever that came my way. After 3 hours, I could still hear Michael's car pulling into the driveway, its tires scraping against the dirt. The front door swung open with sufficient force to shatter the glass. "Hey, Eleanor!" His raging wrath resounded throughout the house as he yelled out, "May you please tell me where I may find you?" Relaxedly perusing financial data on my laptop, I sat on the edge of the leather recliner in the living room. With a reddening of his cheeks and the crumpled envelope I had given him in his palm, he barged in, and I softly clicked it shut. "I don't understand. What does this mean with a weapon-like brandishing of the papers?" he demanded. "Just today of all days, you served me with the papers for divorce. It seemed to fit in well with your plans," I commented in a calm, nearly conversational tone. "The desire for a fresh start was strong in you. All I'm doing is helping you get there." His voice fluctuated between anger and disbelief. Standing straight and steady, I met his eyes. His voice was getting higher as he started to say, "You had no right," but I cut him off. "The situation was perfectly legal for me. Similarly, your choice of Lauren was totally justified." "We all make choices, Michael," he said, his phone humming in his pocket, temporarily easing the tension. I recognized him from when he glanced at his phone briefly before ignoring it. Lauren may be wondering why he wasn't in the shared apartment they had rented, the one he had promised her, as part of their new life. He tried a new approach, adopting a tone that was haughty and condescending. Crossing his arms, he continued, "The prenup expired years ago." I muttered something along those lines and smiled slightly, the kind that made him question his own credibility, since I knew a lawyer would tell you that. Well, it is incorrect. As mentioned in Section 12, the fidelity clause shall remain fully effective throughout the marriage. You should have gotten clarification from your counsel on it. I see. So you didn't consult with one, huh? The color and smugness left his cheeks as he accepted the situation. The prenup he had negotiated for his personal security suddenly put his whole estate, the Oakwood house, his retirement savings, and his share of our combined interests in jeopardy. At the restaurant, he had just committed the most expensive mistake of his life. His voice cracked as he screamed, "You can't do this to me, huh?" until he finally gave up and collapsed into the couch. We built this world together. I tilted my head to look at him intently. Even though you chose to end it early, the call was more louder and more relentless than before, and his phone kept ringing. He grumbled at it and slumped his shoulders even more. "What gives?" I inquired, my voice slightly tinged with amusement. "Lauren's already at the apartment," he said into the phone, almost to himself. Her statement, "She's moved her things in," brought a smile to my face. "That apartment that you and your husband put on the deed to the one you signed last month for the lease." Despite his assent, he remained bewildered and had failed to recognize the trap that I had set up. "Please contact the leasing office." My suggestion was made in a misleadingly casual tone. Credit concerns were identified with that application. Left unfinished. In order to confirm, the representative dialed our home number. He said I dealt with it myself. His wide eyes revealed a mixture of fear and disbelief. He loosened his jaw and parted his lips, but nothing came out. Up on my feet, I retrieved my wallet and a little overnight bag that I had prepared earlier. "The deadline for you to remove your belongings is tomorrow evening," I stated firmly. "Then we'll change the locks." As we made our way to the door, Michael trailed after me, his voice dripping with anguish and begging. "Where does Nathan stand? Is this going to have any effect on him?" With my hand on the doorknob and my temper flaring, I lost all composure. "You have no right to defend our kid with our son Michael." I left the door slamming shut as I went, and Michael was left to deal with the fallout of his well-plotted seaside life with Lauren. He hadn't considered him at the time. Sarah was a psychology professor at UNC, so I took a drive across town to visit her at her home. With just the gentle illumination of Raleigh's streetlights to break the silence, we drove through summertime air thick with the aroma of magnolias. When I arrived at the door, Sarah embraced me tightly, her arms around me as if they were a lifeline. She drew me inside and said, "I just heard from Nathan." Her voice was heavy with worry. "Are you all right?" As my shoulders began to relax, I let out a gasp. "Better than I expected," I said as I followed her into the kitchen. On the counter next to the open bottle of Pinot Grigio, 2 glasses were placed. "I never thought Michael would make such a fuss," Sarah said, her wrath plainly obvious in her stern expression as she slowly poured the wine. At Nathan's graduation celebration in front of all the guests, she brought me a glass, and I accepted it with a shiver down my spine. It was meant to humiliate me, I said, sipping the cold wine in stark contrast to the sweltering evening. Because it was a public rejection, I felt I couldn't respond rationally. Sarah said, her jaw clenching and her lips drawing a thin line. It was always my brother's favorite place to be, with the windows open to allow in the evening breeze. we moved into her sunroom, which was adorned with books and potted ferns. However, this was beyond my wildest dreams. Sarah had always valued her autonomy and professional success, therefore she had never tied the knot. The independence to live her life as she saw fit was something I had admired in her for a long time. Why was he so agitated about that envelope? Sarah pointed out the most crucial part, the prenup that would leave him with far less than he had anticipated, with her mouth hanging open in a bitter chuckle. Keeping my grip steady, I poured myself another glass of wine and set it down. I explained the reason for the divorce. There is proof of his financial dishonesty. So the prenup, I remember the moment he was adamant about it. He was extremely cautious about safeguarding the starting capital that his father had recently given him. Oh, the irony, it's so beautiful. In the middle of complete silence, my phone rang. The name Nathan appeared briefly on the screen. In order to collect myself before responding, I inhaled deeply. "Mom," he whispered with an effort. I attempted to object. "I'm going to Aunt Sarah's, so he wouldn't be dragged into this mess." I started to say something, but he abruptly stopped me, his voice hard. "I am already en route. You've been plotting this for months, and Dad is telling everyone that you've gone insane." Overwhelmed by a wave of weariness, I closed my eyes and listened to his horrible words. He had to have been. Every time Michael would change the story so that he would be the victim. "Allow him to speak," I said, maintaining a composed yet resolute accent. "The truth will be revealed in due course." Nathan showed up 20 minutes later, wearing his graduation suit, but with his tie undone and his eyes red from sobbing. Like a child after a nightmare, he stumbled into my arms, his big shoulders trembling. "Why kept this secret from me?" he asked, his voice muted by my shoulder, a blend of pain and rage. Said I. Due to my overwhelming sympathy, I withdrew and ran my fingers through his hair. "I was afraid I might derail your final semester," I said quietly. He stepped back, clenched his teeth, and wiped his tears with the back of his palm as he said, "Your efforts have finally paid off." Anyway, Dad ruined it anyway. The three of us went to Sarah's living room in a last-ditch attempt to tame the mayhem that had befallen us earlier in the day. There we reclined on her soft gray sofa, surrounded by a cheese and cracker tray on the coffee table. I alerted Nathan about the affair and financial dishonesty as soon as I discovered them. The things that Michael and Lauren did to get ready for their new life together were also included in my story. I sent him the private investigator's screenshots, pictures, and bank records. With his hands tightly clasped into fists and a serious look on his face, Nathan listened intently. "I had a feeling something wasn't right with Dad," he whispered. Sarah softly reached out and gripped his hand, speaking in a reassuring manner. "He's been overly preoccupied for months, checking his phone constantly and secretly disappearing for so-called meetings. But I never expected this." My attorney James texted me, "No one wants to see these qualities in the people they care about." As my phone buzzed again, the urgent petition was approved. The accounts that I had designated as suspicious were placed on hold in preparation for the divorce. Michael was unable to fulfill his commitment to Lauren to purchase the Wilmington apartment since his financial resources were so severely limited that he could not pay for even the most basic necessities. I felt a little surge of relief as I proudly gave the letter to Nathan and Sarah. "Good," Nathan said, his voice authoritative and his eyes blazing with an unbridled aggression that no one had ever seen from him before. "He truly deserves it." "Good," Nathan responded with a level of intensity I had never witnessed from him, before a commanding voice and intense angry eyes brimming with fear and fury. I wasn't naive. I knew my son deserved my undying devotion, but it still hurt me. I gently but firmly reminded him that he is still his father. Your relationship with him has nothing to do with us, Nathan stated with a tight jaw. Perhaps in due time, but right now I can't even bring myself to look at him. The stifling silence in Sarah's living room was shattered by the jingle of the doorbell. Despite his earlier displays of joy in embracing me, he later plotted to destroy our family. Sarah got to her feet and went over to react, her expression revealing how distressed she was. Her return followed shortly after, and her voice was barely heard. "My name is Michael." I braced myself, running my fingers over my skirt, as Sarah brought Michael and Lauren into the room. After all, he's not the only one. As Lauren's auburn locks twitched in the light and her gaze darted around the room, she seemed uneasy as she adjusted her weight. She possessed the poise and composure of a woman who had never faced genuine hardship. She was 35 years old. Storm Michael on the other side was furious. He furrowed his brow and clenched his fists in an outward manifestation of his pent-up anger and anguish. "Eleanor, this insanity has to stop," he said. "Please reopen the bank accounts." Nathan stood up, moved a little closer to me, and tightened his body so that we could have a grown-up conversation. "Maybe you should have waited to tell everyone you were leaving, Mom, before doing that publicly." Michael said, his expression changing as if he had just noticed our son. "Listen, Nathan, you are irrelevant to this." "Is it completely unrelated to me?" Echoing with mounting incredulousness, Nathan reiterated the words, "You bombed my graduation ceremony, and our family and I have nothing to do with it." Lauren cautiously reached out and touched Michael's arm. "Michael, perhaps we ought to depart." With a swift motion, he brushed her aside. "Oh no!" With an icy expression on her face, Sarah folded her arms and threatened to stay until Eleanor agreed to be reasonable. Out of everyone here, my sister-in-law appears to be the most level-headed. "You're the one who created this mess, Michael." I said, my voice barely audible, as I sat quietly and watched the drama develop. I had played the role of peacemaker and dispute resolver for a long time. It was draining to play that part. I'd finally moved on. I spoke in a steady, collected tone and explained that the funds would not be accessible until the preliminary hearing. 3 days from now, that is. The asset partition will be decided by the judge then. Michael muttered, his cheeks becoming even redder. The following 3 days, I don't know what to do. Just 3 days. As I tilted my head, my tone took on an almost scientific quality. You have access to your own account, that one into which you have been pouring funds for the last 12 months. Lauren narrowed her eyes and jerked her head toward Michael as if that weren't enough. What you don't have another account. What was the total number? The air was heavy with the accusing and cutting inquiry. Michael had obviously been untrustworthy with Lauren as well. He paid no mind to her and kept staring at me. "Eleanor, this is vindictive." I looked directly into his eyes without flinching. "This was definitely not you. It's possible that you've never met me, just as I obviously never met you." Turning to Lauren, Nathan spoke in a frightening tone. Was it inevitable that he would inform me about this at my graduation party? Lauren's face flushed as she bowed her head and looked down at her feet. "In my opinion, he was going to have a private conversation with your mom. The news today, it caught me off guard as well." Michael's betrayed expression deepened their divide. Straight out of the gate, Sarah said, "I think you both should leave." She didn't provide room for an argument. "You've upset Nathan to the point where it will be felt for at least a day," Michael said in a more delicate, somewhat panicked voice. "Nathan, you do understand that relationships change with time, right? Sometimes people just grow apart." Nathan remarked, his expression turning even more icy as he glared at the speaker. "Your inability to even have a private conversation with Mom makes you a coward, and I get that." Michael became pale and still his jaw clenching but utterly silent when he was told that you stole from our family while I was working 2 jobs to pay for my textbooks. You said that money was tight. After much effort, he managed to utter the words, "That's not how it was." Although his voice was somewhat raspy, "Indeed, that is exactly how it was," Nathan shot back furiously. "Please, Dad, leave." "I can't look at you right now," Nathan said, breaking the uncomfortable silence that had been building up. After Lauren bowed her head in sign of departure, Michael turned to go. He turned to face me once again and paused at the door, his voice low. "Eleanor, we still have a long way to go. I shall confront you on this." My gaze met his unflinchingly. "I hope you'll try it out." After they left, Nathan collapsed into the sofa, next me, his hands trembling and tears streaming down his face. With trembling lips, he said, "I've never spoken to Dad like that." My heart broke for the weight he carried as I drew him close in an embrace. "Standing up for what's right can be painful at times," I said as I ran my fingers through his long curls. Sarah gave us fresh glasses of wine at a leisurely pace. "To new beginnings," she muttered as she lifted her glass, a little smile playing on her lips. I silently raised my hand in response to the little clink of glass, as if it were a promise. It was actually only the first chapter of a whole new story. The preliminary hearing took place in a Wake County courthouse on a rainy Tuesday morning. In contrast to Michael, who sent a young lawyer from a firm that focuses on corporate law rather than family law, I brought my attorney James. Yet another error in his hurriedly planned strategy. The judge, a tough woman with sharp eyes and an unyielding demeanor, reviewed the prenuptial agreement with great attention, her spectacles sitting on the bridge of her nose. "This document appears to be properly formatted," she said with a severe and rigorous temperament. As Michael's lawyer talked, a young man in an uncomfortable suit seemed nervous and cleared his throat. "Do you disagree with its veracity?" he said. As she adjusted her spectacles, the judge read aloud from the page, "Your Honor, we feel. The agreement has expired owing to the length of time that has elapsed. Section 18 makes it clear that this duration applies to the whole marriage, as well as any subsequent judicial proceedings." Michael hastily advanced and muttered something to his lawyer, who was visibly becoming increasingly anxious as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. No expiration date was mentioned. The evidence of systematic fund transfers violates the financial disclosure requirements in Section 23. The judge continued, her voice unwavering, as she glanced up from the paperwork she was shuffling through, her eyes scanning the pages. "I am maintaining the order to freeze joint accounts due to the lack of full financial transparency. The personal account that Mr. Harper has will still be accessible to him. Throughout the legal process, Mrs. Harper will retain ownership of the family home per the prenuptial agreement's adultery provision." Michael felt a rush of deep pink on his cheeks as he clenched the edge of the table. I could hear him muttering, "This is outrageous," from across the courtroom. As her words reverberated across the chamber, the judge's visage hardened. "Mr. Harper, please." Read the agreement carefully before signing. In 30 days, once discovery is complete, the court will convene once more to conduct the whole hearing." As we departed from the courthouse, Michael hurriedly walked and talked to me in a rush. "Excuse me, Eleanor. We should approach this discussion with logic." I paused, turned to face him, and maintained an attitude of calm determination. After all, we've been together for 25 years. It had great importance. I abandoned him in the corridor of the courthouse. As he felt the weight of his choices crushing down on him, word quickly spread around our social group, and speculation and rumors quickly followed. Friends called all the time, some to offer words of support, and others to find out when the next dinner party was. Keeping my voice calm, I made brief remarks. Our paths will no longer cross, Michael and I. Throughout it all, Michael's carefully crafted persona, that of a prosperous businessman and a devoted family man, fell apart. The financial constraints prevented him from keeping his promises to Lauren. The Wilmington condo deal fell through, and we were deprived of the deposit. He received notification from the dealership on the repossession and the cancellation of the Tesla for which he had made a deposit. 2 weeks after the hearing, Sarah called me to give me the lowdown on what's happening. Her voice was somewhat comical the whole time. "Did you hear?" With an eyebrow lifted, I placed my coffee cup on the kitchen counter and noted that Lauren had left. "Have you already?" she informed her friend Emily. "I didn't sign up to date a man with financial problems." Sarah's mischievous chuckle continued. Apparently, she found out Michael's startup isn't doing as well as he claimed. The revelation didn't shock her, but the speed was impressive. There are no such things as the substantial savings he spoke about. I constructed while Michael was adrift. I had a degree of independence that Michael had no idea about, since I had kept my money in different accounts which protected it. A tiny contemporary office with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the enormous tech complex was rented by me at Research Triangle Park. Harper Analytics is a risk analysis organization that I founded with the goal of empowering women financially throughout life changes. 2 ladies going through divorces were my first clients. Hearing their experiences mirrored mine in ways that were both painful and reassuring. Rapid word-of-mouth advertising increased the number of customers that came to my door. I was an expert at assisting women through difficult financial times, such as those caused by divorce, widowhood, or career upheavals, and I did it with the same level of accuracy that had helped me decipher Michael's treachery. From the ashes of my past, I was able to construct something significant, and each success story brought me a sense of fulfillment that my corporate position had never provided. Nathan, who had accepted a marketing position in Charlotte, would frequently contact me by phone, his voice brimming with joy. When he spoke to his mother over the phone one night, his voice cracked, but he was so proud of her. As I relaxed in my office chair and watched the Raleigh skyline become orange at dusk, I thought, "You're helping people through their worst moments." That made me smile. Just doing what I wish someone had done for me sooner is all I'm trying to explain, I said, preparing women for whatever comes next. Having my skills and knowledge put to use outside my caregiving role was like discovering a whole new side of myself. Our final divorce hearing was on the same day as our 26th anniversary, a day that brought back fond memories of romantic dinners and secret vows. A chapter that had endured for more than 20 years was now coming to a close. Michael appeared weary upon his arrival in the courts. His suit was crumpled and his eyes were darkened with weariness. His investors pulled out when they heard about the divorce and his business completely crashed without my financial counsel. I learned this later on. Photos of Lauren's boat cruises and fancy purses flooded her social media, but she had long since gone. She was now dating a tech millionaire from Durham. Dinner invites and golf excursions were subtly dwindling as most of our mutual acquaintances ojibly distanced themselves from Michael as the entire story out. Judgment was speedy and definitive, upholding the prenup in its entirety. After Michael paid his attorney, he departed with his personal possessions, his failing business, and the funds in his private account, which were barely sufficient to cover a small apartment in an unsavory area of Raleigh. As the prenuptial agreement predicted in the event of adultery, I was to keep our Oakwood house, my retirement funds, and 70% of our shared assets. A sense of lyrical victory resounded across the courtroom as the justice delivered his ruling. What had been Michael's shield had turned out to be his Achilles heel. Michael walked cautiously and spoke softly as he approached me for the final time as we exited the courthouse. I made a terrible error, he confessed, his gaze fixating on mine, as if to find some sign of reconciliation, perhaps even a hint of the affection we had previously had. A door softly clicked shut as I abruptly ended his sentence, my tone mild but forceful. "Oh no, that door is closed." He nodded, his shoulders sagging and his eyes reflecting a sense of resignation and acceptance. As for his comprehension, he remained silent. I actually thought he did it for a change. "Eleanor, my wish is that you discover joy in life." Amid the chaos of our history, he finally spoke to me honestly for the first time in years, and I took it as a little gesture of forgiveness that you deserve it. The Harper Analytics was a shining example of success for women in Raleigh and beyond after 6 months. I was able to take use of my new bigger office's natural light-exposed brick walls and balcony while I sipped my morning coffee and watched the city awaken. I brought on 2 female partners who were equally devoted to empowering women financially, and we formed a community together. My customers were a constant reminder of why I began this path. They varied from young widows to seasoned professionals, beginning anew after betrayal. Even though Nathan's marketing work in Charlotte kept him somewhat busy, he still managed to drop by frequently, and he would often bring takeout from our favorite downtown Thai restaurant. The most ironic thing is, as we basked in the glow of the city lights from my balcony one night, he spoke these words. I nodded, enjoying a drink of my iced tea as the summer air caressed my skin, while thinking about how if Dad had simply been forthright from the beginning, he could have retained half of everything. Sometimes people just want what they want right now, I said in a quiet, contemplative tone. The woman who had once identified herself as Michael's wife and Nathan's mother had forged a new identity in the midst of betrayal and determination. She was an expert in analysis, a business owner, and a strong supporter. The package I had given Michael at the restaurant wasn't just an escape plan. It opened a door I hadn't known existed, and I could have entered a world I had never dreamed possible through it. Behind it, justice and innovation were concealed. By protecting my future, I had regained something far more important, my independence. From my balcony, I could see Raleigh's skyline as a blank slate of opportunity, and I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't felt in years.